The journey to Emmaus is a story of two of Jesus' followers being transformed. Like other biblical stories, it was not the intention that it be understood as history. It was rather an archetypal account of how ordinary folks, people we haven't heard of before, nobodies, could experience resurrection and through that experience become somebodies. Most religious traditions teach that God is encountered only when everything one thought one knew about the divine has been doubted. This is why idolatry is such a heinous crime in monotheism. It locks faith in the cage of certainty. The evidence of texts, if evidence is what they provide, takes one only so far. What matters more is the personal experience of divine encounter. The deus ex machina, the plot device, in this Emmaus tale is a materializing and a dematerializing risen Christ, who is unrecognizable until the end. But the focus is not on this elusive being, but on the transformation of the two travelers. The story suggests that we too can experience such transformation. The fable begins with the two followers out on the road, walking away from Jerusalem, concerned, nay, traumatized by the crucifixion of their spiritual mentor, Jesus. Like us, when faced with a crisis, they're out, walking their grief and confusion, somewhere, anywhere, away. They're not in a synagogue or a temple or a church, nor are they with a priest or counselor or leader. They are simply together, two nobodies going nowhere, physically moving while trying to process and make sense of what's happened. This way of dealing with trauma is happening on a beach or park near you today. It is very ordinary. They're joined by the risen Christ, disguised as a nobody. The gospel, as succinctly summarized by Kurt Vonnegut, is about a nobody who was a pain in the neck to a lot of people who had better connections than he had. Those people dealt with this nobody by nailing him to a cross. But boy, were they wrong about his connections. I think Vonnegut, in his amusing style, was saying that nobodies need to be treated like somebodies, because in the end we're all somebodies and we all matter, even pains in the neck. The travelers tell their new companion what's happened and how they feel about it. Their hopes for messianic liberation have gone down the drain. The stranger, though, doesn't rip open his shirt and say, "Ta-da, here I am, touch my scars." No, he steers them to their common spiritual resource, what we know as the Hebrew Scriptures. From that source, they discuss and create interpretations that reshape how they understand their experience. The mistake is to assume that the Bible delivers certainties. Rather, at its best, it's a collection of imaginative stories for discerning the mystery of God. What it offers is like a window that opens out into another way of looking at the world. Today we have a number of spiritual resources to help us in times of trauma. There are the texts of the major religions, but there are also many other wellsprings, some that don't even recognize themselves as such. Most resources aren't written to address our specific needs, which are both common and unique. Many resources are redundant, filled with assumptions from a bygone age. Yet even ancient spiritual writings can be creatively taken out of context and molded to fit ours. And this is what happened on the way to Emmaus. We are later told that this process of appropriating and applying the ancient writings to their trauma evoked a burning in the hearts of the two travelers. There was something going on that was more than head knowledge. A healing flame had been blown to life within them. Part 2 of the Emmaus tale is arriving at an inn. Like with his pretense of ignorance on the road, the mystery man Jesus acts as if he's moving on. But as is the custom of the East, they entreat him to accept their hospitality. In the Hebrew ritual of blessing food, the travelers recognize who it is. At which point, the author kicks the Deus ex machina into life once more, and the stranger come risen one is gone. Poof. Never underestimate hospitality, sharing food, grace, and gratitude. For through such things can flow the power of life-changing godness. This story, written some 40 years after the crucifixion, is saying that it was the experience of the early church that when they met to share hospitality and extend grace to each other, the transforming God was in their midst. When they gathered as nobodies, men, women, and children, on the fringes of both religion and often society, in the presence of that accepting and relationship-changing grace, they became somebodies to each other. Likewise, today, when we gather in a service of worship, or for a potluck meal, or to protest against injustice, and that mix of giving, receiving, and mutuality is present, then so too is the possibility of rekindling the fires of one's soul and the soul of our community. I think Christians can be over-reliant on Jesus. People want to deify him and extol his extraordinary, unique characteristics. And certainly he is the front door through which I go looking for God. Yet here in this fable of two travelers is a reminder that the church, in the absence of the physical presence of Jesus, continues on without him. Emmaus is about empowerment. The two dejected nobodies are not only cheered up, but through the examination of spiritual texts and reflective, doubting dialogue with each other, as well as sharing hospitality, they become empowered to live as disciples. This empowerment, resurrection thing can happen anywhere with anyone when experience is shared and grace is present.